Hey, this is Dr. Ruth Roberts. I hope you guys are doing well. We're having some spotty internet connection, so hopefully this doesn't bomb out so much. So check this out. That's Esau, and he's very excited about, yeah, thanks, buddy, the new Holistic Total Body Support supplement that we've got coming out. We should be getting shipped in hopefully by the end of this week, and as soon as it's available we'll have it up on the website at the original Crock-Pot diet. And Esau's very happy about it because it's got all the good glandular stuff that just isn't available in so many other supplements. Right behind Esau is Gracie, who is the newest member of our family. She is an English setter, just like Esau is. She's a sort of a Blenheim color, or the red color. She is deaf, and at 11.5 years of age, she'd been a hunting dog all of her life. She couldn't hunt any longer because she couldn't hear the instructions her owner was giving her and that sort of stuff. So he took her up to the shelter, which is just, I don't think there's really much more tragic than a much older dog that's relatively healthy being taken to a shelter. But at any rate, that was his choice. He took her up to the shelter. Group that we got Esau from in the past, Above and Beyond English Setter Rescue, got her taken care of medically. Thankfully, she's actually very healthy, and just had to get some teeth cleaned up and had one bad tooth to be extracted. And Sally Ferry, who's working locally to support Above and Beyond English Setter Rescue here locally in Charleston area, got photographs of her through a friend of mine to us because we lost our dog Sam about a month ago. We were not really thinking about a dog, but this was just such a great fit. She's such a fabulous sweetie pie. We're learning how to teach her how to interact with us better as far as hand signals and things like that. And then that's really good timing because Mr. Esau here is starting to get a little deaf, and so we're teaching him the hand signals at the same time. So a couple of great things there. One is, our property is set up so that there's an invisible fence, which we'll get her trained to as best we can, and then a chain link fence all the way around the property. So it was pretty bomb-proof, but the upside is that's why you teach your dog hand signals early in life, so that if it does lose its hearing, whether it's for a long period of time or whether it's a short period of time, they know how to respond to you with very basic stuff. So things like come, wait, sit, no, things like that. The other big thing we're teaching her is out of the kitchen, which is a scowly face with a big pointed finger. So that's pretty entertaining. So maybe we'll publish our dog signing alphabet, although I think there's something probably a bit more organized than that already. But as you can see, these guys are hanging out and enjoying the day. It's almost 80 degrees here in South Carolina, which is pretty weird for February, but we'll enjoy it because it's one of the few times of the year when the humidity is down. So hope you guys are doing great this week. I had a question from one of our Crock-Pot Cooks community members, and unfortunately Avery wrote in that his dog has very severe kidney failure, and she's at that point where eating is a little bit dicey. She can she'll like certain things and then chow down on it for 2 or 3 meals, and then that's kind of it. And then he has to figure out what else she'll actually eat, and that really is not much fun. So what I responded back to him about, and I think Avery had read through my purchased and then read through the kidney health program, and this is kind of the tough case. I mean, unfortunately, it sounds like his dog is in late stage kidney failure when things are really difficult to work with. But in general, as far as feeding, if your pet is ill and it's having some major health issues, where it's nauseous, whether that's from the disease process itself or whether it's from medication it may be taking, chemotherapy, that kind of stuff. Kind of a good rule of thumb is to have an assortment of stuff available. So, and then when they like something for that day, only feed it for that meal and only feed sort of normal meal volume. What tends to happen is that we get so excited that the dog is eating something that we just give it tons and tons and tons. And what happens, and especially with diseases that make these guys nauseous, and us as well, is they're like, oh, finally, something that tastes good, and they chow it down, and then they feel nauseous. And they're like, oh, golly, that made me sick too, so I won't eat it ever again. So the best idea is to have a selection of 2 or 3 things, and just, feed a normal meal size of that, and then rotate each day so that even if they're getting a little bit nauseous, they're not necessarily associating it with having eaten a ton of whatever that thing is. And then, as much as we like cooked foods, then this is where we often need to alter the recipe a little bit, realizing that we're not going to feed a balanced diet anyway, because these guys are feeling so icky, they're going to eat kind of what they can eat at the time. So generally what I'll tell folks is to limit yourself to just a really nice protein that's moderate fat to lean. So things like pork tenderloin, chicken breasts, hamburger that's been boiled, things of that nature. And then something that's easy to digest that's got a little bit of fiber. So for instance, butternut squash, sweet potatoes, some carrots, apples, things of that nature. And kind of mix those two together. If you, as far as supplements go, so you're going to offer this protein and some sort of a carbohydrate to get them to eat. As far as supplements go, what I would do is pick the things that are the most essential, so supplements and medications. So if your dog is super nauseous and Prilosec really helps it feel better and helps it to eat better, then that's an essential. If your dog is really nauseous and not wanting to eat stuff regularly, then fish oil not so much. So kind of pick and choose the most important things. And probiotics I would definitely try to sneak in there. They're relatively flavorless, so in many cases you can still mix that one into the food safely. But things like Prilosec or essential medications, then instead of having to cram the pills down your dog's throat every day, which really is not fun for anybody, especially the dog, then get something super gnarly like liverwurst or peanut butter or cream cheese, something like that you can get around the pill, so that hopefully your dog will decide that that's delicious enough that they'll just go ahead and eat it. And rotate those as well. So, that's what tends to happen is we find this super yummy, delicious thing, and we use it and use it and use it, and then the dog or the cat decides that this is no longer really tasty. So find 2 or 3 things you can use for medication to hide them, and then just pop the pill down in that. And what I would do as well is a piece. So for instance, if you're using liverwurst to get medication down, use a small piece of liverwurst, no medication. So blank, blank, pill, blank. And then that way, hopefully the dog just keeps eating it and doesn't have any issues with getting more stuff down. So that's kind of 2 good general guidelines for pets that won't eat due to disease and or medications they may be taking. Another thing you can, if your pet's really having a great deal of difficulty eating, that's where there are a couple of medications that can be really helpful. And mirtazapine is one that's used for both dogs and cats, and then cyproheptadine is another medication that can be used to stimulate appetite too. So those are options you can talk with your veterinarian about. Sometimes I would say they work relatively well, about 60 to 80% of the time. And then for cats, strangely enough, Valium and all of the medications in that class, so alprazolam as well, gives cats the munchies, and so we've used that in the past for helping stimulate their appetites and get them to eat again. So it tends to be more often that we'll give them alprazolam or lorazepam now. So that alprazolam is Xanax and lorazepam is Ativan, because there had been some issues with cats, and generic Valium or diazepam developing liver issues, even with a relatively small dose. So those are options to help stimulate the appetite. Acupuncture is a great way to help stimulate your sick pet's appetite. Kind of gets things moving, and there's actually a point on the nose right between the haired and non-haired region called Shungen, and that's spelled S-H-E-N-G-E-N. And what that does is, if they don't, number one, it's like if they don't respond to that point, that kind of lets us know that there's not so much chi there, and they're having difficulty and probably approaching the end of their lives relatively quickly. And as bizarre as it sounds to needle that point, strangely they are not overly distressed with it. So for some of these guys, I'll needle that point and they'll shake their heads and the needle comes out immediately. And then other animals will actually sit there with the needle in and then proceed to scarf down whatever food is in front of them. So it's a pretty interesting point. So acupuncture, again, can be a really big adjunct to helping your pet feel less nauseous, and that's been shown on the human side as well. For people that are undergoing chemotherapy, it's been a real boon as far as improving their appetite and things of that nature. So other things that you can do to help kind of palliate your very ill pet, as far as how to make them feel more comfortable, and deal with life a little bit better on a daily basis. So there's, certainly if there are certain types of cancers, those can be painful, and that's where pain medications can be very, very useful. There are, massage helps tremendously as well. So there's a couple of videos on our website. One is about Tui Na, which is a basic form of body work in Chinese medicine. And then there's also a passive range of motion video. And so if you're feeling icky and laying down a lot, that laying down or stagnation in and of itself can make you feel pretty cruddy. So massage is definitely something you can do at home to help your pet feel a little bit better and get stuff moving. But just gentle rubbing even, we think of we tend to like to be massage heroes and endure the pain and suffering that our therapists inflict upon us. But in truth, that sort of gentle movement of the skin and fascia gets stuff moving that hasn't in a while, and often can help these guys feel a bit better, partly because they're getting blood flow back into those tissues. So that's very helpful. Think about all the things that you really, really, really enjoyed doing with your pet when it was well and younger. And go do some of those things. See if it's fun for your pet or not. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a bit stressful for them. So you'll have to kind of look and see what's really going on. But I think that's very helpful. Because if you're there seeing your pet have a good time, you can only be present with them at that moment. And I think that's really all they ever want of us anyway, is to be present with them when we're sitting there. So even though we may be sitting on the sofa and absent-mindedly petting them, we're thinking about, oh my God, my dog has kidney failure and it's going to die in 6 months. And believe me, I understand that. It's like that sort of advanced knowledge is difficult to deal with. But if we stay in that place of sadness and grief before our friend has already left us, then that makes that time filled with more grief instead of as much joy as it possibly could be. So do the fun stuff with them. Just sit and be present, pet them, breathe, think about the good times. And I think that helps them feel a great deal better as well. So that's kind of what I know. I've got a few folks showing up. I don't know if you guys have some specific questions, but a lot of what I was talking about is sort of palliative care for pets and what you can do to kind of make that difficult time easier. As our teacher, Dr. Shea at the Chi Institute used to say, part of this is making peace with your difficult burden. And often it is far more difficult for us, the pet owner, than it is for the pet. I think they seem to perceive death and dying differently than we do. And and I hope approach it with more grace. I hope to find as much grace in that time whenever it comes for me. But we'll see how it flies. So once more from the porch on John's Island is our new pal Gracie and our old friend Esau, who really thinks those bottles of supplements are swell to take a nap against. But as you can see, it's a nice, warm, lovely, lazy day on John's Island. And even Mona's hanging out with us too, but she's the princess, so she is on the biggest, thickest bed, of course. So you guys have a great week. Let me know what questions I can answer for you, things you'd love for me to talk about, that kind of stuff, and I will get it done. Thanks much. Take good care of yourselves.